Hello and welcome to my first demo video for my honors project for my dental appointment system. So I have a fresh install of Ubuntu 18.04 and I'm running this in VirtualBox. So I've already installed the VirtualBox guest editions. So we can see I've already installed the Build Essential apt-get package, and that will involve some C and C++ dependencies. So I'm just mentioning that now because later when we start using some Python dependencies, they potentially might rely on some C and C++ libraries or compilers. So it's worth noting that I've already installed this package. So I guess I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. So this first demo video is going to be focusing on how to launch my application, and we'll go over installing Docker and Docker Compose, and then we'll show how to build the Docker images for my application and then running my application. So first we will need to install Git. So we'll just hit yes here to install all the dependencies for Git, and then that'll be installed. So then when I use Git, I always clone using SSH instead of HTTPS. And to set that up, you'll need to run SSH keygen. And that will generate your public and private keys, and then you'll need to set up those public and private keys in your GitHub repository. So I won't demo that because there are other resources on the internet for finding out how to do that, and I don't want to give away any security information, so I'll be back in a moment. Okay, now that I've set up my SSH keys, I can clone my repository. So what I usually like to do myself is I keep all my repositories in an src directory in my home directory. So I'll make that right now and cd there. So you'll want to cd to whichever directory you wish to clone the repository to. And then in that directory you run git clone git@github.com:/ShaneBishop/dentalappointment.git. So you run that. It will ask if you're sure you want to connect to GitHub, and you say yes. And then now it's cloned the repository, so I can go inside the repository and I can see everything that's inside it. So right now we're interested in some of the files in my scripts directory. In particular, we're interested in the install docker compose.sh. So we can look at the contents of this file. So this is a shell script, and it will install Docker and Docker Compose on an Ubuntu system. So you can look at this if you want to see what it does. It's not very long, but it will install those two tools we need to run my application. So we can just run that just by running /install compose.sh. Oh, so this gives us a message, curl is not found, so we'll need to install that. Okay, so curl's installed now, so we can try rerunning the script. So here we can choose yes. And yes. Okay, so Docker is available and Docker Compose is also available, and we can run Docker commands. So next we can look at the README. The README has a section here for running the app, and it says what I already ran. You can run scripts install docker compose.sh to install Docker Compose and Docker, and once you've run that, then you can start the app by running Docker Compose up-d. I should have maybe been a bit clearer. You need to run it in the root of the directory, so the root of the project directory rather. So you can't, if you're in scripts, that command won't work. So it's Docker Compose up-d, and you need to be in the root dental appointment directory. So what this will do is this, it uses this Docker Compose.yaml file, which defines a couple different services, and they'll all run as their own. Each of the services will run as its own Docker container on your Linux system. So first it will build all the Docker containers from scratch, because it'll be your first time running the application, and once that's done, you'll be able to restart the application quickly without having to rebuild. But the first time it'll build everything. I think that's because the first time when you just install Docker, so we can see here we added my user. I'm Shane on this machine. So we added my user to the Docker group. I forgot to look at this message. Please restart your shell to use the Docker command without sudo. So we can just quit this, and then I believe we can go straight back to trying this again, and I think I should be able to actually run Docker commands now if I move to the right place. So yeah, like I said, you need to run it from the dental appointment directory, otherwise you'll get this message because it won't have found the Docker Compose.yaml file. So we can try again. All right, so I believe what I need to do is restart the computer. So I will restart this virtual machine. Okay, I've restarted the virtual machine, and now I'll run this Docker Compose command. So we can see it created a network as defined in the Docker Compose.yaml file. It created a volume, and now it's setting up for the DB container. So that finished. Now it's setting up the backend Docker container, which we have a custom Docker file for. So in the Docker file, it has 9 steps. The first step is from Python 3.8, so that's a Docker image hosted on the internet. So first we will pull that, and then we'll run the rest of the steps in that Docker file. So this will proceed to build the Docker images for each service defined in the Docker Compose.yaml. That will take, I'd say, approximately 20 minutes or so, depending on how much memory you've allocated to your virtual machine. So I'll just pause the recording and come back when this is finished. Okay, so the Docker Compose command has completed and it was successful. So I just want to point some things out in the output. There'll be some things where it'll tell you a warning because the service was built. That can be ignored because we expected it to be built because it wasn't around yet, so that's fine. You can also ignore this warning about an unsupported engine. You can ignore these deprecated warnings because these aren't really problems we have any control over, because they're the dependencies of our dependencies, and they get to choose which versions are used. And yeah, so everything was successful. It shows that all of these services were created. Then we can run Docker PS. So Docker PS shows you all of the Docker containers that are running, and we can see our Nginx is running, the backend is running, the database is running, and the front end are running. So here's the names: Nginx, backend, database, and front end. They were all created about a minute ago, and they are all alive. So they've successfully started. So they might not be finished initializing, so what I usually do is docker logs. So you can, this -f is follow, so you can follow one of the logs to see if the startup has completed. So for the backend, it says that it got to the run server command and the server has started. So we can exit those logs and we can check if the front end is finished. So the front end has compiled successfully, and it tells us we can view it in our browser. So if we copy this link, or we just type it directly into our browser. In our case, because of Nginx, we don't need to specify this port. So we can just type localhost into the browser, and there we are. We can see the dental appointment system is up and running, and you can access it from your browser, and you can log in as the admin user. So that's how to start everything. Once you are ready to stop it, either because you want to shut down the virtual machine or because you made a change to one of the startup scripts and you want to test that, you can run docker compose down, and that will stop all of the containers. So everything stopped, and if we run docker ps, we can see there are no Docker images running. And then we can restart the application with docker compose up-d again. And this time it won't need to rebuild everything because we already built everything. So it'll just start everything, and then we can watch the logs as the backend comes online. So we can see the backend starts quite quickly. The front end takes a bit longer to start, so we can see it starting it right now. And now it's finished starting it. So once it's finished starting it, that means you'll be able to go back to your browser and it will be live again. If you go to your browser and try to access the website before the front end has finished starting up, you'll get a different page. You won't get the actual proper website. So I went over how to install Docker and Docker Compose using the installation script in my repository, and then I also demoed how to build all of the Docker containers that are necessary for my application, and then how to start and stop my application. Thank you for watching. That's it for this video.